it's like a lineage of like healing that's been passed on since the beginning of time.
Yeah. Because I remember before I kind of was able to have that moment where all of a sudden I took a step back.
But that's okay to do, because you have to understand we have limitations as people. We don't have to be perfect. I started to see myself in different forms, in different beings, in different shapes, in different places in life.
Like there's so much mystery that judgment is just, to me, ignorant. Like
in front of you right now, who I am right now is not the version of myself that I hope to be, dream to be, want to be 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. I hope to God that my evolution does not stop in this moment.
I was like, oh shit, I'm not my thoughts. Like that was a huge moment.
Like no sleep. I remember like I get like 30 minutes of sleep, just start to kind of fall asleep at like 7 or 8 a.m. because of the benzo withdrawals were so bad. And then I'm up.
Of certain recovery programs was telling you is wrong, but I did the exact opposite of it. I said, hey, if this is what you choose to do today, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
We just finished our episode with Parham that we're about to jump into. So we're recording this after. Wow. Amazing. Another classic, honestly.
Dude.
Like, how good was that? Whew.
Yeah, it was so cool. I love when, minds come together and we can just generate just like so much conversation, so many nuggets of wisdom that just appear as if from thin air, and over like accumulation of the lifetime.
Yeah, so we'll talk about who he is, but basically he was a therapist that kind of saved my life. Now he's in a way he's like a owner of like a huge like I don't even want to like a therapy or a recovery, not recovery center, but some organization related to recovery. And McDonald's. We got into McDonald's. we talked about everything. So this is like less of like an astrology. He's a therapist. And we talked about healing. We talked about, I wrote notes down, like letting go of attachments, expectations, regaining connection with the self. We talked about like trends of like failure to launch with like youth in today's world, reprogramming, how healer, like kind of the mindset that you have to take on as a healer to be kind of like a surgeon, where you're not judging the people that you're coming into contact with.
I know, honestly, like getting real with it, it was like there was so much packed into this. And it's like, I really recommend listening to this one because we like explored so much about just like human psychology, just like kind of the pitfalls and traps we get into with our own mind, even within the spiritual community, and like kind of dissecting. We went so deep into kind of dissecting like the things we do to like hide from our authentic self, and like, our own distractions, and kind of how to get back in touch with the core and with the heart. So
yeah, well said. So I'm over like saying this was our number one podcast. Let's just say that
you already said it at the end of the podcast.
Okay, yeah, that's my Sagittarius Leo energy, like number one. Let's just say that I'd say we've had probably 3 or 4 special podcasts. I'd say this is probably the third podcast we've had that I would say was special, ultra special. They're all special, but this one was like something. Yeah, it was amazing. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and we're gonna jump in right now. Bye bye. What's up, guys? Welcome to our podcast. So we have a very, very, very special guest. He is a guy, if you guys have read this book, some of you have, some of you haven't. He kind of saved my life. I wouldn't say saved my life. I wasn't going to die or anything, but he was the guy, the counselor. Now he's way higher up in the rank of what he's doing, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, he played a huge role in I guess we could say like me gaining self-awareness, me gaining a basis or a foundation of what I am today, of what I become. So I don't know how it would have happened without you. Like literally, I think I quoted you. I don't know how many times I quoted you in the final edition of my book, but definitely like there's quotes that you've told me that have stuck in with me for so many years. Like the one with LA, like there's 5 different highways to LA. I say that all the time, and so much more. So welcome.
Thank you, Jesse. I don't know if I can take credit for saving your life, but I do remember being a part of Yeah, I do know that I was a part of watching you go through the transformation process. And the same way that it was profound and life-changing for you, every transformation has the same effect on people like me, because that's why we get up and do what we do. And it's really, I'm honored to be here. You know, I really am, Trey. It's really cool to meet you too, my man. Jesse spoke very highly of you and your friendship and who you are in his life. So by default of Jesse, I feel connected to you as well. So I look forward to spending some time with both you gentlemen, hopefully sharing some experience, some hope, something with your audience that they could take away from, and just having a really nice conversation together.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this and down to get into it.
Let's get into it. Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone that doesn't know anything about you, because I posted about you several times, so maybe some people listening to this follow you on it's at the 1 Minute Therapist, one spelled with the one number, and he has lots of amazing short videos that pretty deep, but in 1 minute. But yeah, how would you describe kind of like what you do, just like the brief summary of
Sure,
everything?
man. So I'll talk about the 1 Minute Therapist here first. So I really wasn't too active on social media for an extended period of time, for like ever. And due to everything that happened with the pandemic the last year, I was kind of forced into that space because that's where everybody was interacting and engaging. You know, I'm more of a stand in front of a crowd and give a presentation, a lecture type of guy. So once that was taken away from me, I realized what I have to do is go into the Zoom world, the social media world. And so the 1 Minute Therapist, I started it this January, so it's only about 5 or 6 months old. And it was an accumulation of a lot of talks that I did on Zoom. And I started to chop these into little shorter segments because, you know, a 45-minute or an hour long talk of Parham wasn't something that was too engaging. And I started chopping them up and I realized they were all like 1 minute long. So my wife from the other room, I was like, hey, babe, all these videos are like a minute long. She's like, you're the 1 Minute Therapist. I was like, oh, that's kind of catchy. 1 Minute Therapist, who would have thought? So I created these, man. To be honest, there's no catch to it. I'm not selling nothing to it. All I am is trying to create a moment in time that helps human beings change the way they think, the way they feel, the way they act, improve their lives a little bit. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But that's kind of what I'm doing for fun. But, you know, I'm a licensed clinician. So what that means over here, at least in America, is I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also an advanced addictions counselor. So that's kind of what I do professionally. I'm one of the partners or the owners of a pretty big behavioral health, mental health outpatient facility here in Huntington Beach, California. You know, people come here to improve their mental health, the way they're kind of just living, whatever they're experiencing, whether it's from addiction to grief and loss, to anxiety, to trauma, and everything in between. And I also coach high school basketball. You can kind of see all the teams back there. I've done about 12 or 13 seasons of this high school basketball stuff. So it's something I do for burnout prevention, Jesse. We were talking about burnout earlier. It kind of keeps me going. It keeps me motivated. And on a side note, if anybody is, you know, has ever struggled with addictions or is currently going through addictions from your audience, I do have a date that I kind of transformed and changed my life around. That's back to June 13th of 2008. So for me, I was, you know, caught up with drugs and alcohol also at a younger age, previous life, we'll call it. Yeah. So this June 13th, which is only a few days from today, I should be hopefully celebrating 13 years abstaining from drugs and alcohol, which is, it's a big accomplishment because it's a different world that I'm living in today. So hopefully that gave enough background of who I am and what I do.
Yeah. And well, congratulations, 13 years.
Thanks, man.
That's a lot of time. You know, when I first met Parham, we were in these little, it was like it was after I was in rehab. So I moved to California where he is, like Huntington Beach, Orange County area, Costa Mesa. And I was in a sober living house called the Ohio House. And then with the Ohio House, we were forced to do this like this full day, every single day of like therapy, your group therapy, you're with like just doing tons of things. You know, I was getting like no sleep. I remember like I get like 30 minutes of sleep, just start to kind of fall asleep at like 7 or 8 a.m. because of the benzo withdrawals were so bad. And then I'm in this group with Parham, like 6 or 7 other guys. You know, some of them, I think one of them tragically died. I think another one of them was facing like 15 or 20 years in prison. Have you heard about anything about that Mike guy by chance? Just like a random question. The guy from Louisiana.
I don't think he's doing that well. We'll leave it at that.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
leave it at that. But yeah, so we that was kind of how it happened. And after, or I guess throughout and after, I started seeing Parham one-on-one, and yeah, just so much was taught. I think one thing that stood out was that he was, now he's like an owner and probably like from a financial, social, all these different levels, like way higher, but he was doing it from passion. Like it was really like my first example of someone who was literally like going so fucking hard from like a compassion standpoint, caring so much about everyone in the group, like really going the extra mile. Cause you can see that thing, or you can, it's something that you can really feel. And, yeah, I'm kind of curious, like were you always like a very like empathetic, compassionate person? Was it something you learned? How can you speak to that ability or that trait maybe is
Sure, man. Thank you for remembering that about me, because it is something that I do consciously think of when working with human beings. I do believe that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I do believe that it is only when compassion is present do people allow themselves to see the truth. And I was always very compassionate and empathic, if you will. I remember one of vivid memories, dude, when I was 8, 9 years old, we were visiting the United States. I was living in Iran. We were visiting the United States, and we went to Las Vegas with my family. And there was some homeless people outside. And I remember crying, dude. I'm talking about like crying, full-blown tears, and throwing a complete protest and a tantrum in the street, saying, I'm no longer going into these casinos because people are in there wasting all this money when there's all these people outside that could be using some of that money to have like food or roof over their head. My parents were just laughing at me, but like I did a full-blown protest. I like ruined the vacation. So there's something in me. Yeah, I know, Trey. There was something in me that that gravitated towards that like suffering of another human being and doing my part to help alleviate that from a young age. So I don't know if that's innate or something that was reinforced, but I remember when I got caught up with my addiction and got caught up with my depression and got caught up with my low self-esteem, I was always really hungry for other people to show me compassion. But the more my behaviors became overt, the more my behaviors became less likely to tolerate, the opposite reaction was happening. I was getting sent to principal's offices, and people were getting mad at me, and people were yelling at me, and people were telling me what I'm doing is wrong. So my behaviors was causing the world to react to me in a way that I didn't want or need, So that's my whole premise when I deal with people, even when they're being resistant, even when they're giving me a hard time, even when because those who are hardest to love are the ones who need it the most. How about that?
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
And it's like I kind of went through a hard time as a teenager too. I think most people are in these days. And after coming out of it, you have these reflections on your behaviors, and you see that all the bad things that kind of happen to you, well, at least in a state where you're drawing in that negativity, you're coming from this negative place, and you start to draw in from all these other places. So you draw bad people, you draw bad crowds, you're releasing anger, so you're having trouble in school, trouble with family life. So you really start to become your own generator of and you create your own negative reality.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a loop, and it's hard to break out of on your own, because it's kind of, once you get stuck in that cycle, if you will, it kind of just repeats itself over and over again until someone comes with compassion and they say, hey, if this is what you choose to do with your life today, that's okay. Let me help you do it in a way that you might see it different, or let me help you at least try it a little bit differently, just as an experiment, just as an exercise. And Jesse, if you really go back to our history, you'll realize there was a lot of things that the dogmatic thinking of certain recovery programs was telling you is wrong. But I did the exact opposite of it. I said, hey, if this is what you choose to do today, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If this is how you want to go about this, go about it the way that feels good to you. But let's try, see what other options exist, and that's the whole compassion part. That's what people need to hear.
Yeah, and one thing you did, it was very I'm very rebellious by nature. So like someone tells me to do one thing, I'm gonna probably do the other. The Parham was very much like, just if you don't want to do like AA, like everyone was kind of pushed towards AA, the 12 steps. I was like, that doesn't, I'm not like some part, like having a sponsor, I was like, I don't really need that. I don't like, that's not for me. And he was for it. And he also was so good at like pumping me up, and making me like see, because there's these things I knew about myself, like positive traits or whatever. but to hear someone like continuously reinforce them and have faith in you was huge. And yeah, I think if I would have had like a different counselor during that time, like we did so much deep stuff. Like we got creative with the therapy. I remember like burning. I had like I still had like a tie up with like an ex girlfriend, and like we like wrote a letter to her and burnt that fucking shit. And it was, dude, it was deep. Like you wouldn't think something like that would have such a deep psychological effect, but literally, like, I remember seeing that letter burn. I was like, everything about her and me was just dead from that letter. It was crazy.
Sure, man.
It's refreshing to hear that, someone in the mental health industry is kind of like taking a creative and out of the box approach, because like, just like from my own experience and other people that I've talked with that have gone through this kind of the mental institutions and the medications and the psychiatrists and everything, you really start to lose faith in the whole system, because they make you do things that are to the book, but aren't necessarily adapting to the person that's in front of them. And, seeing these conglomeration of kind of effects or behaviors and categorizing you into one certain thing, which will like signify this certain type of treatment. And it wasn't until recently that I got someone who actually was willing to adapt with you. And I think that's so important, to take, each person as they are and really see where they're coming from and take that time to connect on like a really deep heart level and see what's the best path for this person.
Yeah, the best analogy I have is mental health field. Imagine if they're just prescribing the same type of treatment for various different people that have different backgrounds. This happens all the time, right? They say, okay, you come here, this is what we're going to give you. You come here, this is what we're going to give you. It's the same for two people, even though they're completely different. It's as if us three go into a restaurant together and we go in there and they say, hey, this is what you guys are eating today. And you're like, wait, I have food allergies. Or you say, I don't like this, or I want something else. Sorry, everyone in this restaurant eats the same thing. So the same way the restaurant understands that if they do that, they'll stay out of business and they won't be able to actually create lasting impressions on human beings. The mental health field has to come and say, hey, tell me about what type of dietary needs you have, for example, in this example, and find out who and what that person is sitting across from you, and find out what they need in order to heal, not telling them or dictating them what you feel they need to heal. And it's different for everyone. It takes a lot of time, energy, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it that flare of compassion that you're talking about, it's like when you're in the pits is like, once you kind of get out of it, you're like, okay, yeah, I can bring compassion and love for myself. It's like, once you're in the pits and you're kind of, you're looking for that flare everywhere, especially outside of yourself, because you're never told, hey, actually, all the love you need is, it's inside you. All the, support, compassion you need, you just need to focus that on yourself. So, there's those certain people in life as we kind of go through, which they kind of, light your candle, they kind of reignite that, that compassion, that like hope that there's something else on the other side.
And the beauty of that, by the way, they're lighting something that already exists there, like you said. The wick of the candle is already inside all human beings. And once that's lit, then they can sustain that, moving forward. And yeah, man, we all think alike. This is good stuff. I like communicating with like-minded people.
Yeah, for sure. I knew it'd be like that. So I knew we didn't really need any questions. But yeah, one other thing that like just came to my mind is how the hell are you able to like show up every day? Like, I feel like if I was in your position, I'm just such a moody motherfucker that like I'll have like one day where I'm like can save everyone's life at once and can give like the best, like as an astrologer, like do like all my readings back to back to back. And then like another day where I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't even talk to another human. But I feel like you have such consistency, every day. Even I'm sure there's days where you are feeling off and you have to be there for people who were like really in the dumps. How's that?
I go back to a few things. So one of it is every time I want to quit, I remember why I started. Ooh. Right? Like, what was my motivating factor? What's my why, right? It's like, you go back to the Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl book, which is something I recommend to all human beings to read. And he talks about finding out the why in your life. And once you get really clear on the why, the how takes care of itself. So, hey, some days I might wake up and my best isn't what it was the day before, but it's still my best. And that's okay to understand that my best can change from day to day, right? It's like the 4 agreements, always do your best. One of the agreements is just having compassion to yourself that, hey, if yesterday I did 6 readings in your case, and today I can only do 1, but it's the best I can do today, that's okay. And that gap that exists between that first level and that second level, that's the compassion gap, the self-compassion gap that we have to give ourselves. Now, if I wake up and say, I could have done more, but I was too lazy, you know, okay, that's fine. Accept where you're at and recommit the following day to give a little bit more, you know, to get some rest, get some energy, and give a little bit more. And if you do that consistently over time, you become a consistent person. You know, it's holding yourself accountable to that consistency.
And I imagine also like one thing, you know, that I really respect in a lot of kind of the teachers that I've had is approaching, you know, us, their, you know, students, or, you know, in your case, like a client or someone that you're working with honesty of where you're at. So many people feel like I have to be presenting this high to be able to like function or to be seen as valuable or some sort. But you know, I have come from like a yoga background over the past like 6 years, and you see it so much in the yoga community where all of it, there's a yoga face or like a yoga personality, or like you have to be super like sunshine, unicorns, rainbow to be able to be respected. But it's like when I go into a class and a teacher is like honest and they're presenting like, you know, here I am, I'm rooted in some sadness, but you know, I'm gonna show it. I'm not gonna hide it. That's like really where the most respect comes. And if you're just showing up every day and meeting those things that you know, you could say are lower vibe, or you know, not, you know, applicable. I feel like when you even just admit it in front of people, it almost dissolves away. It's like, yo guys, today I woke up and I was feeling like shit, you know, I kind of had some like memories about past, and it's like just saying it out loud instead of trying to hide from it has such a huge impact. And people who you're with are going to respect that because you've actually had the courage to admit where you are.
Yeah, and you know why that's so they respect it is because there's a high probability that's also where they are at, or they were at yesterday, or where they will be tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
So by you coming down and connecting to their level of humanity, which is what we all go through, and that's, I like to refer to that as radical authenticity, right?
Yeah.
It's like a full version, like a full-blown version of authenticity. It's like an extreme version of authenticity, and people like that. You know, people like extreme stuff anyway. So, but yeah, man, and Jesse, what you see on the outside of me being so consistent. There are days that obviously it's not to that level of like, damn, is he like this all the time? But I can tell you this, that most of the time I am, because what I'm doing, I'm passionate about, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
I really do love what I do, which helps a lot. You know, I can't say I'd be the same way if I was doing something I didn't love to do. And then I really take a lot of mental and physical care of myself, like psychological, emotional, physical care of myself. Without that piece, dude, I would not be able to perform the way I do. You're a big basketball guy, you like sports. You know that those high-end athletes are doing things that you're seeing off the basketball court that allow them to produce, to kind of display their skills that way. And that's all the stuff that happens off the court, right? So that's kind of stuff that when the cameras aren't on or I'm not in a group, it's like, what am I doing to make sure that I show up the right way? And those are the more important elements, I think.
Totally. Yeah, so it's really interesting, you know, in astrology, spirituality, whatever, however you want to group healers, you know, the word healers, there's typically this coming from not necessarily a rough background, but some type of struggle, you know, sometimes like in my case, it's more internal, right? And we don't have to get into like reincarnation and stuff like that, because we've had other podcasts where we've talked about that, but it comes from different places, and different people are propelled into being healers for other people, but they first have to go through like a really difficult reality themselves. And you mentioned, I don't know if I fully heard kind of how it was for you before, but like one thing I talked to people about is that people sometimes have difficulty imagining themselves as a different version, as like a higher version. Could you look back at yourself? I don't know when like the highest point of your addiction was. Could you even imagine that you would be how you are today in terms of like inner and outer?
No, if I said yes, I would be lying. But I would tell you this: I did have a inflated sense of self that I thought I was going to be something different. I mean, back then, before my addiction got to the point that I dropped out of life. I was a political science major with the hopes and ambitions to one day be a powerful lawyer. So that was my someday goal, right? That obviously didn't come to fruition when I started to go to courtrooms as a defendant rather than a lawyer over and over again. So that was,
Good experience, though.
that's the truth of that. But what happens is, as I started to heal, right? And what I mean by healing, so we talk about the word recovery all the time, right? Whether you're in addictions, mental health, or just life in general, I think all human beings are recovering from something. The word recovery, if you actually look at the word recover, it means to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed, right? That's the definition of the word recover, to regain something that's been lost, stolen, or destroyed. As I started to regain that connection to myself that had been lost, stolen, or destroyed as a result of addictions, I started to see myself in different forms, in different beings, in different shapes, in different places in life. However, the end result, the end image, it never became crystal clear. And to be honest, as I'm standing in front of you right now, who I am right now is not the version of myself that I hope to be, dream to be, want to be 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. I hope to God that my evolution does not stop in this moment, as I believe that all life forms need to evolve. I mean, look at a plant, you know what I mean? I consider myself a life form, and I need to evolve. And hopefully this conversation and what I do the next week and what I do the next month, it builds on each other. So a year from now, if you're talking to me saying, hey, Parham, did you ever see yourself being the way you are today? Compared to this guy, I would have been like, absolutely not. You know what I mean? So I don't believe that should ever stop for people, you know?
Totally, yeah. And it's beautiful how when you actually like kind of analyze like how the micro level affects the macro. You know, it's just like what stood out from what you just said, or one of the things that stood out was how this conversation, you know, this like, you know, hour, however long we talk, maybe usually 90 minutes, but whatever. This could be a big game changer, you know, like, and I think as humans, we come into different situations, different days with expectations. And I think expectations ruin everything. And I think that, you know, when we speak about freedom, how much freedom do you have when you're waking up and you're expecting this is what's going to happen, this is how I'm going to think, this is how I'm going to be when I go to sleep? Like, I feel like life is only really fun, and I'm not going to say worth living, but, you know, really fun and at its best, at least for me and for most people I would say I've spoken to, when there's that freedom, when there's that ability to just, that spontaneity, that chance of like something wild happening, something crazy, like good crazy, not bad crazy. So definitely resonate with
the word addiction, right? The word addiction, the Latin root of the word addiction, which comes down to like addict, it actually means to be enslaved to, right? So when you ask any addict in the world, hey, what's any slave in the world, what's the one thing you want? They're all going to say freedom. So I believe that all of us are addicted to something that takes away the pain. So if we remove that addiction from us, then all of a sudden the freedom gets created. And that freedom is at the level of thought and at the level of choice, right? To wake up in the morning and say, I can freely choose what I want to do today is a very empowering. And I think it's a human need, actually. You know, I think that it's something that we all need to have in our lives to feel healthy and to feel connected to ourselves. Freedom of choice, man. Big deal.
Yeah. I think the most things humans are addicted to is kind of, I feel like we are addicted to our own suffering in certain ways and our own dramas and even our own thought patterns. And it's like, we like to think over things instead of actually being with what's there. So, you know, we'll run a whole story and a whole scenario forever and over. Because I remember before I kind of was able to have that moment where all of a sudden I took a step back and I was observing my thoughts. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not my thoughts. Like that was a huge moment. And I just feel like so many of us are still like, even I like will fall into that. I'm like, and I'm like, God damn, I'm in my thoughts. Like I'm in it and I can't get out. And I'm like, I can't have, but it's like, okay, we'll just see how long this goes. And then until I get that space again. Yeah. So much of us are kind of submerged in that sense of self and that identity that we love it, that ego that we're so addicted to, you know, ourselves and our stories and our plays that we like to write in our own head.
I'll tell you this because you brought up a really good point. the first time I had that aha moment of being able to step back and separate and watch myself as the observer, the thinker, that was a Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is what got me there, just to be honest. You know, it was about 11, 12 years ago. That's when my journey of kind of being able to be present and understanding what it means to realize I'm not my thoughts. So that's my background with that. But I'll tell you this, I often tell people that I work with that thinking is one of our drugs of choices. So what I mean by that is if my physical being, if my body, let's say at a younger age, if my mom and dad were yelling and screaming at each other and I was at home by myself and all of a sudden I start to feel afraid inside my body, right? A child has a hard time managing those emotions because they're overwhelming. So what we do is we go from the level of body to the level of thought. So we start thinking and overthinking because overthinking, you know, when you overthink, you actually don't feel at the same time. When you go on the level of your thoughts, you don't actually feel what's happening. That's why some kids sometimes they daydream outside the window, you know, because they're completely outside of their bodies.
And there's a sense of control also.
100%, yeah. You control the environment with your thoughts. But if we do that at a time that our brain is developing in a moment by moment interaction with the environment, moving forward in life, every time our body feels discomfort or scared or feel all that kind of stuff, we go straight to the level of thought and we do exactly what you're saying, that cycle that completely disconnects us. And we start to believe that we are that.
Yeah, as a kid, I was so imaginative and I did go through like a bunch of trauma, which ended up dissociating me from reality in a bit. And what I did to cope with that was I would make imaginary things real in my head. And I would use my imagination and to just create a safe place and a safe world for myself. But as that kind of developed into my teenage years where it got darker, then that imaginary world that I believed to be real started to manifest as demons and entities and like imaginary voices. And I would believe them to be real and separate from myself because I couldn't claim that pain that I had originally felt when I was young. But once I did claim that pain, all those demons, all those apparitions, all those things just disappeared because I was like, this is mine. This is my responsibility. My pain is my own. And that was like so empowering. And, you know, demon, you know, I think it was, who was it? Oscar Wilde, who said we create our own demons and our own hell.
Yeah, man. And the fact that you said you went into your pain, it's Rumi, a Persian poet, says the cure for the pain is in the pain. The avoidance of pain produces more pain. So it's exactly true with what you said. Once you go in there and you own it and you explore the pain, you realize, wow, this is what I've been running from for so long. Like I can actually handle this as an adult now. As a child, I couldn't. But as an adult, I can actually sit, look at it from different perspectives. I can ask for help. I could journal. I could breathe. I could do a lot of different things I didn't know how to do as a child, you know, and we can actually face our demons, if you will, and hopefully resolve them.
Yeah, definitely with using words as a drug. I think that's so common. Yeah, it makes me think of the book, The Body Keeps Score, and just everything related to that form of psychology. And, you know, we also, we hold different emotions, different stuck emotions in different parts of our body. That's one thing I find very interesting with the somatic psychology.
Yeah.
I always say the fear of the fear is more powerful than the fear itself. It's like, what was this book or this, I guess it was a metaphor that said, let your fear in for tea. So instead of pushing your fears away, pushing your shadow, as they say it in the spiritual Instagram people, instead of pushing that away, just like be nice to it, you know, like create an identity for it. You know, if you have different moods or different personas, give them names, give them shapes, give them voices. And it's like, they say it's like a baby, where if a baby's crying and you don't give it attention, it's going to keep crying even louder until it gets attention. So it's the same thing with us and our traumas, us and our fears, us and the parts of ourselves that we haven't dealt with, that we haven't given attention to. It just needs to be treated like you would treat a baby, like you would treat a best friend, like you would treat someone you really cared about. Pushing that same energy inwards is, like, to me, the essence of spirituality and I guess growth as a whole.
Yeah, and if that baby keeps crying, right, eventually it will stop. But that need that it had was not met. Yep. So it's going to stick. That need not being met is going to stick. And it's so important to kind of dig in and actually resolve these, because what happens is, like, our brain, our body is a software. Like, we've installed certain neural pathways and ways of thinking that are operating beneath our, like, surface consciousness. So, we say, okay, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I see the world, but we don't see everything that's underneath that's actually influencing that. So just how we could perceive one little thing could be because we didn't have one need met when we were 2 years old, and that could continue to affect our life, like that Princess in the Pea book, that old fairy tale where she just can't sleep and she keeps turning and rolling, and there's something wrong, but there's this little pea that's just under all these mattresses, and then she eventually finds it and is able to finally sleep.
Yeah, those were great, man. I actually, I rarely ever get a new perspective on something, but those were very powerful new perspectives in the mental health. I actually hadn't heard either one of those analogies before. So thank you for teaching me something.
Yeah, it just sprouted.
Yeah.
From the juice of this conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
It's going to change the world. Huh. Well, yeah. I think there's so much in mental health we could go into. You're in America, there's so many different angles we could take this conversation. Is there anything go ahead, Trey.
I was curious because, like, especially like American Western culture, modern day culture, I don't know if you've heard of, like, the terms like the rites of passage, or like it's almost like initiatory things that, like, when you're back kind of older days, and even in certain tribes and places now, they have these kind of marks of age where it's like you must go on some sort of quest or thing that will transition you into your next stage of life. And I know, like, from myself, from going on my own expeditions, and almost setting my own rites of passage, I didn't actually know what I was going to do or what passage was about to come out, but it's like they have huge, dramatic, completely life-altering effects. And it's like, could you speak on kind of how society has shifted away, and do you think we should kind of have rites of passage for teenagers or kids kind of moving from next stage of their lives?
Yeah, there's a population that I work with here, in terms of their ages are 18 to 26, let's call them. That's the primary age group, as I guess you remember too,
It's like emerging adulthood would be the name, right?
Yeah, young adulthood, I'd say.
Yeah.
Emerging adulthood. And in the US, what I'm noticing is there's this thing called the failure to launch going on. And what the failure to launch is, these people that are 18, 20, 24, 26, they've been unable to meet the milestones set by culture, society, all that kind of stuff like that. And it's fascinating to know, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And I've never taken a deep dive into it, to be honest with you. However, I do know that in the United States, this is the first generation in a long time, and we're talking about post-World War I, if you will. So we're talking, maybe 100 years, that this generation is actually unable to move forward in life like previous generations did. So the statistics and the data show that majority of kids that are finishing universities and finishing colleges, instead of going out and putting their down payment for their first home, they're actually returning back to the home that their moms and dads live from. And it's completely different than what was previously in generation. This is the first time in the United States that people aren't getting married at a certain age. They're not having kids at a certain age. So everything has just been postponed, if you will, and delayed on the timeline of life. Now, all that being said, I believe that everyone's timeline is different, so I don't think that there's a certain age that you're supposed to accomplish a certain thing. But these rites of passages that you're talking about, they are, when you look back in the history of them, the ceremonial nature of them, and the point that a community comes together to celebrate the moving forward of a human being in whatever area of life we're thinking about. I do believe that there is value to them. I do believe that we need to incorporate them in society. However, the fine line is, like, how do you do it without creating an expectation that if you don't meet this criteria, or if you don't have this rite of passage at this time, you're less than, or you're inadequate compared to someone that just did. So there's a little fine line that goes there, but there's a lot of toxicity going on in the United States, man. it's sad. Jesse was asking me before you got on, Trey, how am I managing it? How am I dealing with it? And then to be honest with you, I just keep my life very, very sacred. I'm also into the holistic health, whether it's a yoga or Pilates or something like that. I'm really into what I put into my body. I'm careful with who I hang out with and the level of toxicity or the negative energy and all that kind of stuff that they may have or, that they might bring into my world. So I keep it small, I keep it sacred, and I try to create a sanctuary even in the midst of the chaos. So my goal is to always find serenity in the midst of chaos. However, if someone came from a different country and saw the US, especially a few months ago, they really would be concerned about how people were so polarized and how people were so against each other, human beings against each other. And if you're a child coming up into that system and it's either this or that, right or wrong, black or white, it's hard to have rites of passages that the whole entire society agrees upon. They don't agree on anything.
Yeah.
And even not being allowed to be wrong, like that's horrible. I mean, like how can you, like no one's ever achieved anything of significance without fucking being horrible at it first, and there's so much toxicity in American society. That failure to launch idea is interesting. It makes me think of American society, how, and I know you're from Iran and Trey is obviously multicultural. I'm multicultural. I feel like family systems in the US they're not valued. There's not that much value in family as opposed compared to like, especially like a country like I'm in Romania. And I feel like that plays a huge role where in a lot of circumstances, there's not positive role models. There's not encouragement. Kids are kind of go to school, go spend your money, go like grow up, figure it out. And there's this thought that parents, I guess, maybe naively have is that their kids will just figure it out as they did, but the world's evolved, like now kids play with their fucking smartphones and their computers and they don't really connect like they did before. They don't get to learn like the street smarts, right? That's like, I think that's like a huge thing that's lacking from yesterday or lacking in today's world is like these experiences. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that issue.
It's like there's this also there's this like rhythm and pace to the world that's kind of taken over. It's like especially with the 9-to-5 job, it's getting earlier and later, starting earlier, ending later. But it just like you said in the beginning, how you have to take each person into consideration. We've generalized an entire continent, an entire group of people, society, like millions of people, to follow one pace, one rhythm, which is like, it is extremely fast, like you're the second, you're 3 years old, you're put into school, and then you don't really even have the time to think. It's like in Sweden, I think you don't even learn how to like, write until you're 7 or something. They have way more time to be a kid. But it's like in the US, it's like bang, 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 grade after grade, homework, stuff, then university, then, job, master's degree. It's just so fast, and you're expected to keep up, and everyone's expected to keep up with it. And if you don't, then you're like, oh shit, what am I doing? Have I failed? Have I like kind of like, I don't belong here? There's all these like ostracization when, even in the US, just like living with your parents is compared to in China, where it's like, you live with your family until, you get married, you move back in with your family. But in the
Same
West,
with Italy
it's like,
too.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's these expectations of everyone, and it doesn't adhere to all the different diversity and variance of people, even just like, night owls versus morning birds or something. It doesn't even take that into consideration.
I'll tell you guys this too. Jesse, you remember earlier you were talking about the micro and the macro, how it all connects? The United States is unique compared to some other countries that we're talking about here, like let's just say European countries or even the country of Iran, where I'm from. The United States, there's the sense of nationalism that exists inside of it, even though it exists inside America, don't get me wrong, it's different than the way nationalism is in some of the other European or Iran. And what I mean by that is the majority of people in those countries, right? And I understand there's immigration, I understand there's people from different cultures and backgrounds that move there, but the majority of the country are people that have a lot of pride in who they are and the country they're from and all that kind of stuff like that. Safe to say in the rest of the world. In the US, there is so much divisiveness, and there's so many different cultures, different backgrounds, different people, and it's so large and spread out over such a vast land, if you will, with so much diversity, that people don't have that sense of pride everywhere they go. And what happens is, what happens at the macro level happens at the micro level in the family system, in the family homes. You know, that family values that you have all over the world, like you're talking about Italy, we're talking about China, we're talking about Iran. The family values just isn't the same because people don't have the same values collectively. Like, people don't care about their brothers and sisters who are struggling outside the house. They just don't. You've seen it in America, man. Homeless epidemic is just ridiculous. People don't let that stuff happen in other countries, man. You don't just let your own people of your own country like die on the streets. But in the US, there's 60,000 homeless people in Los Angeles, a city that the whole world looks up to and says, must be nice to live in LA. You go there and it's a dump. You know, it's sad, it's tragic. And that wouldn't happen in just any country. So there is a sense in the US, and sometimes during political times, there's a little bit more kind of coming together, if you will. But for the most part, you saw how divisive that was. It was 70 million people thought one thing, 70 million people thought another thing. I mean, what kind of a family structure can come up in that? You know, and it's a little bit more extreme than what I've noticed with other countries. You know, you see football matches all over the world, and that beauty that happens there just doesn't happen, you know, in the US, unfortunately. And so I think that's what leads to some of what we see here, the brokenness. But I'll tell you guys this, since I have you both here, there's this talk that I have. It's a long talk. I'm going to cut it short because I think you'll both find value in it. And it's called, It's Just Not Fast Enough. And I don't know if this is just a US thing, but it's probably all over the world that's happening, but it's called It's Just Not Fast Enough. And this was inspired, believe it or not, by a yoga class I was in. And we got there and we got into child's pose, and the yoga instructor said, I need you to all take a deep breath, relax, and go back to the way things used to be, okay? So for a lot of us, we had a point of reference to the way things used to be. It was like a slower world. We weren't so interconnected. There wasn't so much, you know, connectedness on our cell phones. The fast-paced life wasn't so fast. The 9 to 5 wasn't 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. You know, there was a different pace, right? Yeah. But then I thought to myself, there's a group of people of younger generations that they have no point of reference of the way things used to be. Like the way things are right now is the way that things are right now. There is no other point of reference.
Imagine your childhood in COVID.
Yeah, dude, and then I started thinking, okay, how does this impact mental health, and how does this impact societies and communities? And then I just like went down the rabbit hole. So a long time ago, if you guys were pissed off at me or each other, let's just say you guys don't know me. So if you guys were mad at each other and you don't live close to each other, you would say, you know what? I'm going to grab a pen, I'm going to grab a paper, and I'm going to write a letter to him, and I'm going to let him know exactly how pissed off I am, right? And you would have to grab that letter after writing it for an hour. You'd have to go to the post office. You'd have to put it in a pigeon. A pigeon. You send it off, and Jesse receives it, and he's like, screw this guy.
Fuck you, Trey, motherfucker.
I'm going to write him back and tell him what I think. And then you write him back, and then you guys have this communication that might go over a course of a month.
We should do that, Trey.
What's up?
I said we should do that, Trey. Write letters of anger to each other.
Hey, but check this out, man. That wasn't fast enough for human evolution. So then you think about, okay, the telegram got created, and then you think about telephones got created. I mean, you know, before the cell phones that we're all familiar with, it was like these landlines, right? And if you were really pissed off at Trey, or Trey was pissed off at Jesse, you're like, I'm going to call Jesse up. And you call him, and he's not home, and says, hey, sorry, I missed your call. If you leave a message, I'll call you back. And it's like, oh, this guy. And then you have to tell him how you feel on his answering machine, and then sit back and wait for him to call you. But that wasn't fast enough. And then we go into cell phones, calling each other on mobile phones. That's not fast enough. We got FaceTime. That's not fast enough. So the way we communicate with each other has changed, right? And then you think about the things that we want, in life. When I was a kid, this is a true story. We had these things called catalogs in the United States. A catalog was a little booklet of a department store that you would flip through, and you would find something that you wanted that they couldn't find in the store. So if I had good grades, if my parents said you get a reward, I would go to this catalog and say, this is what I want. They would put a check inside of it. They would send it off to the department store. Maybe 4 weeks later, my item would show up and I'd say, oh, I got what I wanted. But I had to sit for 4 weeks every single day, waiting and wanting. But that wasn't fast enough. So Amazon comes out. At first, when you order something on Amazon, it was like 5 to 7 days. That wasn't fast enough. Amazon Prime came out. Yeah, I got that in 2 days, Jesse. When Amazon Prime came out, it's 2 days. Now Amazon, if you order the same day, you get it the same night. If you order within an hour, you get it the next hour. They got drones, man. It's not fast enough. And you look at all the different things in life, right? Everything we do, the pace of life, the speed of life has changed. So what does that do for emotion regulation? Because human beings, as you guys know, we're supposed to sit with discomfort. We're supposed to sit with our negative emotions. We're supposed to sit with not getting the things we want. But because life has changed so fast, we anticipate and expect. Expectation is the root of all heartbreak, Jesse. We expect that when we're feeling sad or angry or whatever, that we should fix it like that, like everything else in life.
Quick fix.
That's not happening, man. That just isn't happening. That's why people come to places like my facility, because they want to feel better, but they want to feel better now. The way they get their Amazon.
Yeah, it's like the American smile. They've got like a shit ton of wounds, like it's a boat that's leaking, but they've just put plasters over everything, and it's like, I'm fine, I'm totally fine, like there's nothing wrong here. there's obviously they've just tried to just patch it up, like you said, too quickly.
Yeah,
just like everything else, man. And just patch it, just patch on and move on to the next moment, and thinking that the next moment's going to be different when it's not. It's just another patch.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are a good amount of people are waking up to the psychological, spiritual knowledge. You know, like as you said, and I'll say it a million times. There's what do you say, 5 or 6 different highways you can take to get to LA. You know, some people use LA representing higher truth, spirituality. Some people take music. Some people take astrology. Some people take psychology, whatever it may be. But it does. I think there are a lot more people waking up to that. But at the same time, there's almost, I see this other decisiveness or divisiveness in society where it seems like there's some people going like this very high like version of themselves, and there's people who have like doubled down on the shitty versions of themselves as of late. And it's just this whole dichotomy of dark and light. And I from my viewpoint, everything in the universe, even COVID or anything, there's a reason to it, right? There's a spiritual significance to everything. There's a polarity to it. But it's just crazy. And I really like what you said about, I wrote that down. Expectations is the root to all heartbreak. I think
that's William Shakespeare, by the way. That's don't credit me to that.
No. I'm gonna quote you now. But yeah, I mean that is there ever like a more relevant quote to the current time than now? I mean, we like living an expectationless life. It's so much easier said than done because expectations are not conscious, right? We create expectations. Like you can create an expectation when you're 5 years old watching a cartoon and you see something, and then that creates this like mental image that you have no idea about that's guiding your life of how you think your life's supposed to be. Even what I do in astrology, I need to be careful because, I always tell people you are not your chart. Your chart is the deck of cards you were dealt, but however you decide to play the game is up to you, because people can get into this sort of thinking where, okay, if I have this, astrological or psychological makeup, almost as fatalism, I have to go this way. I like, for example, I'm a Sagittarius moon. If I go so deep into the fact that I'm a Sagittarius moon, maybe I'll never ever settle down in a certain country or place. I'll just keep moving over and over and over because I'm a Sag moon and I have to keep moving. So I think that I'm curious what more you could say about living that expectationless life.
I wanted to jump in real quick. Yeah. I feel like the opposite of like expectation is the root of all heartbreak, or whatever the quote was precisely, but it's like it's almost like letting go is the heart of like letting go Savior. Is like the key to romance. The romance of life is like letting go of that expectation, because like imagine two people, like one's there's a guy and a girl, and the guy has this expectation. It's like, oh, I either want to get laid or I want to kiss this girl or something like that. And so they keep trying to force the moment, which ends up killing the moment, which ends up, resulting in this like heartbreak. But then there's the other person who's just like, I don't know how this is going to go. I'm just going to be here. I'm just going to let go and see where this energy moves. And then that's really where the romance and the beauty of life takes place. It's like having the mental state of like a falling leaf. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
you're
for
letting
people
it,
though.
it is scary. It's really scary because like actually, so what I've noticed is like in my spiritual practice, when I make real physical and concrete life decisions, it'll start appearing in like in my dreams or an out of body experience. So if I've, you know, kind of taken the courage to let go, I had this experience where I was out of body and I felt the fear. And the fear is what keeps us like holding on and like having this expectation. And then I felt letting go. And it's just this pure release, like free falling eternally, and just like going back and forth between those mediums and learning how, okay, yes, you're here, you're in this fear. Maybe you're trying to create and generate expectation. But then, okay, now that you notice you're here, can you let it go? Can you fall back? And that falling back and that surrender, you know, like kind of stepping off the cliff and letting, just letting the romance of life take over.
Yeah, man, that's well
Beautiful.
said. I do believe
Beautiful.
letting go is the attribute of the strong. Sometimes we think of letting go as being weakness. You know, letting go is the attribute of the strong. The more we let go in life, the more we gain control. And that's control of our thoughts, actions, and our feelings. So when you're saying I'm able to let go and all of a sudden I can show up, you know, that's when we're actually in full control of our physical being, of our space, of our surroundings, of our mind, our mood. We're connected. It's all a byproduct of letting go. Letting go is a beautiful thing to do. And it's like on the flip side of it, we hold on to every attachment that we have. You know, if you ever notice, if you ask somebody who they are, the same way you guys asked me who I was in the beginning of this,
Yeah.
I attach to all these different labels that I've created for myself, identities and stuff like that. Because that's how we relate to this world. It's through all of our attachments that we have. So we're so used to doing it that when we do need to let go of something, it feels foreign, it feels scary. I think you were talking about it's a fearful thing to do.
It's like you're falling.
Yeah.
It's like jumping off a cliff, you know, like, you know, like it's like when you're
leap of faith.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you're gonna be fine in the water, but you still are scared because it doesn't feel good. It's like, yeah, jumping into cold water, right? But one thing that just came to me when we were talking about this, I wrote down, I'm writing a bunch of shit down, is so letting go of attachments, but then there's also the more complicated piece, or maybe for some people it's more complicated, letting go of the expectations of other people on you, right? Because you can do all your inner work, and you can be that leaf, but then when you have people that are in your life that are close to you, I feel like there's even more of a self mastery that's needed, which is like, so this is more feminine, right? Like from an astrological perspective or alchemical perspective, what we're talking about, this letting go of within. But this is more difficult for spiritual people to do because it's more masculine and it requires boundaries, right? Of like, okay, now I understand what I need for spiritual growth, for my awareness, for me to get to where I need to get. But how do I create a life, a system? How do I avoid the people, the situations, the environments that are going to pull me back? And I think that's where a lot of people that I talk to, and Parham, I'm sure it's maybe similar for you too, but at least, you know, I'm speaking to more spiritual involved people who really struggle with that, who really struggle with how can I not people, you know, how can I disappoint this person, if that means me going towards my highest growth.
You know, you asked how do we let go of the expectations we have of other people, or other people have of us. Is that what you said?
I think.
Okay, so how do
other people have of us?
Expectations that other people have of us. I think the work, because we have no control over what they do or don't do, right? It's impossible. You can't control people's expectations they have of you. However, we can control and intervene on the expectations we have of other people. So when I'm able to reduce or minimize or even let go, hopefully, ultimately, of the expectations that I have of other people in life, by default, the expectations they have of me, they're not going to feel the same. But the more I expect from other people, the more their expectations are going to be felt by me, if that makes sense. So I think the work begins with ourselves and being able to detach from that, because we expect a lot from people when we're unhealed and we're really struggling in life. We want people to show up a different way. We want society to be a different way. We want someone to express love to us a different way. We have these expectations, and when they're not met, that's vicious cycle we were talking about earlier today. We start to create that world around us that's really negative and dark and toxic and all that stuff. And it stems from self. It gets generated from self, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, something I see in the spiritual community is like, okay, I've done on the work to be a loving person to myself and other people. And then they come into the boundary of someone who hasn't done that work. And they're like, oh, this person is low vibe because they haven't done the work and they're judging me. But what's actually happening is they're being affected by that judgment of them. And what that further reflects is that they haven't actually fully resolved their own judgment for themselves. Because if they're letting another person's judgment affect them, then that means they're still judging that part of themselves. And it's all like a reflection. So you see this person is like, oh, I don't like this about you. And but that's actually what you don't like about yourself, because if you did like that about yourself, you wouldn't care. You'd still have that compassion for that person. You'd still see where they're from and still see their own judgments. So.
Yeah. And another way to say what you said right there, Trey, was if I've done my own work and I say somebody else hasn't done their own work, so they have they have a bad energy.
Yeah.
In that moment, I have effectively judged that human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So the response of someone that's worked on themselves says this. Should be the response, actually. It says, if that's where you are in your journey right now, in your healing journey right now, that's okay. Because where you are in your healing journey doesn't impact me, like you were talking about. If it does impact, that says more about my healing journey than it does about where they are in life. So people that get into that spirituality trap and their ego gets big and they think they become gurus and saints. Some of them do have a very, very harsh, judgmental outlook to people that aren't doing what they feel they're supposed to be doing.
That was like the epitome of Boulder, like where Jesse and I lived.
I was just
everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Super entitled spiritual people.
It's like, Parham, you don't understand. If you go to Boulder, like you'll cringe. I guess like
beautiful like landscape.
Oh, beautiful.
And really healthy people, but
physically healthy. But let's not get into that loop or that whole.
Is that where you went that I wrote that your recommendation letter and all that stuff for?
Yeah. And it was invaluable. I'm not sure it's like you'll see in the book whenever you dive into that, that it was invaluable, but I ended up deleting the main chapter. Like I had a whole chapter about it, and there's a reason I deleted it, because like it just, so much of the stuff like didn't really need to be said. Like, I mean, I met Trey, I learned, it helped me with my spiritual growth, but like there was a lot of like this kind of like what you were talking about, this kind of like fake spirituality. But hey,
it was a great mirror though, because like I kind of got sucked into it, because it was like I literally did a 180 flip. Like I was emo gamer to hippie spiritual person within like months, of taking LSD and trying marijuana for the first time. Because in Singapore, if you do that, you're gonna get really fucked. So
tell them what really happens if you smoke marijuana in Singapore. Like don't joke.
Well,
like, what's the truth?
Yeah, smoking is like huge penalties. Like they have death penalties there. So I mean, I'm pretty sure it's similar in like places in the Middle East too. It's like public executions on Fridays, but it's not in like the main square, but it's off in some remote place near the airport or something. But
that's their NFL.
But yeah, so it's like, so what happens was a lot of people like me were going through a shit ton of hard shit, okay? And then we find, oh, here's a new world. And this new world is so bright and colorful and beautiful and so full of love. And so I modeled a whole persona into this world. But what happens was I was just another mask, another layer that I put over that stuff. And Boulder was really great in actually seeing how I was doing what these people were doing, because I saw what these people were doing. I'm like, oh wait, I'm kind of doing that too. And it takes, and then I'm like, oh fuck, I've created a whole nother persona. I got to break that down too. It's like, okay, let's go into it. And then it's like, all the shit that I had buried is still there. And I'm like, okay, so this is the real work. This is the real work, not this kind of, it's like the Hollywood of spirituality. It's like you become,
Yeah. Like how can I show the world how spiritual I am, like that kind of stuff, when real spirituality is like, it's just so weird. Like to me, and I always felt that way in recovery also, Parham, and is that like I would do a lot of stuff alone. I don't know if you really remember, but like while like I still hung out with my friends a little bit, but like I always felt like my recovery and my spirituality and like my meditation and all the books I read, like I felt like that was fucking personal, like I didn't really want to show that off to the world and talk about how I'm a spiritual giant or something, and I felt like
I read that in your book when you were talking about the Ohio house.
Yeah, I did keep to myself, and I think that was super valuable because a lot of those guys, and rest in peace, Eric, he was my best friend there. He passed away.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you knew.
I knew that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's rough to even think about that, but yeah, for me, I think spirituality is all about deepening deepening your awareness of yourself. And when you're trying to show off about something like that, it's kind of funny to think about. And me and Trey, we sometimes will joke about it, not like in a really demeaning way, but we'll just like look at, just kind of how we were in Boulder. Maybe we'll see someone that we knew in Boulder, like post like something on Instagram, and it'll just kind of remind us of like the energy of it. And it's just such a trip to think of like, like I'll speak for myself, like to think of like how I was kind of in that a little bit. Trey more than me, I would say, was more in that Boulder state of mind.
It was the LSD, very ungrounding. I became like this LSD hippie fairy in the clouds, in the sky, and then all these like installations, all this new information coming in. It was like, yeah.
I always have to be Trey's PR and precise that he didn't do it that much.
I did it way more before I moved to Boulder. It was probably like, I was probably doing it like a couple times a month. So it wasn't like frequently, but and it was getting bigger doses every time. There was one point where I took like, 750 micrograms, and I was like, oh, like I was looking over and I saw insanity, and I was like, oh shit, I kind of went a bit too far, and I was like tipping over into insanity. I was like, and that was kind of what made me rein back, because I was like, I could go too far with this.
Yeah, but even that, like kind of what I was saying before, really quickly, like even that, there's a point to every single one of your trips, like everything either of us has done in our life, every little thing, even if it seemed like it was like a dumb spur of the moment like decision, with like everything has led you to where you are today. Maybe that trip that you went through where you saw, I know you told me you saw yourself as like 100 different yous sitting on, like you were like sitting on the board of a cliff, and there was like 100 different like yous that you were like seeing as mirages. Like maybe that's like why like helps you in your writing today, or maybe that's like increase your consciousness level in some manner. So it's interesting.
I do believe that we are a collection of all of our experiences, conscious and subconscious, that we go through, and all the interactions we have, and all the little moments, like all the moments that have led us to this moment right now. You can't say which one was less or more important. They all have lessons in them. They all have nuggets of teaching and wisdom in them that hopefully we can pull from and kind of incorporate the ones that help us, connect to other people and connect to ourselves and live our most optimal version. And with the flip side of it, we could also not do that. You could connect to the moments that disconnect you from yourself, that harm yourself and harm others, and move forward and wondering, why does life not feel the way, I thought it was going to feel? So all the answers are within our own experiences.
Yeah. And in the beginning, those ones that disconnect us, all those choices, like, slowly that voice that's like, actually this is going to take me away from myself. In the beginning, when you're a kid, you have that big feeling, like if I do this, it's going to be kind of bad. But you still make that decision, and you make that first decision to kind of do something that's going to lead you down a bad road. And the more you do that, the further you get away, and the smaller that voice that's supposed to bring you back gets. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
Yeah, it's conditioning, man. We desensitize to that stuff.
Yeah.
That voice actually literally goes away. And that voice can be also like a candle you were talking about. Sometimes we're so disconnected from that voice that we really don't hear it anymore, that pulls us back, that you might need someone to sit with you and talk to you and kind of just remember, like help you remember that that voice exists inside you, that always helps you come back. We all have that kind of internal compass that brings us back to where we need to be. It's just we lose connection to it. I truly believe that.
Who did you guys have, like when you guys were teenagers, did you ever have someone around that even when you were going through the tough shit, there was like someone that kind of would anchor you back? Like for me, there was this one girl called Christine, and we never really got intimate, but she just had a way, like even when I was in my darkest moments, of looking straight into my eyes and pulling me back to the front and like bringing me back to joy, bringing me back to like, okay, wow, I'm here, I'm back again. I don't know where I went. Like, did you ever have those people?
Jesse, did you?
Shit, I don't know.
I had
really.
Well, you think I'll just answer this one. I think I had it growing up, whether it was like grandparents or even my parents. And then when I lost touch to myself, like when I lost connection to myself, I really missed that voice. I missed that feeling so much until I met the guy that helped me get my life around. So what maybe Jesse was referring to as me, the person that helped me kind of save my life, if you will. It was this older Persian man. He was a therapist. And I sat with him. And at this point I was addicted to cocaine, crack cocaine. I'd been kicked out of school. I had a legal, record going on with me. My family wouldn't talk to me. I was really lost, man, suicidal, depressed. And this guy sat with me over the course of an hour, 2 hours as a therapist. And he made me okay. He made me be okay with who I was and how I was living my life. Like he made me feel like I wasn't a piece of shit. He made me feel like I was a human being that was just doing things out of pain. And I was doing things out of like reaction and all that kind of stuff. And when I left his office that day, I promised myself I will make another human being feel the way this guy made me feel, like straight up. Like he lit my candle.
Yeah.
He reached into my, like your eyes, as you called, and he pulled me out and said, yo, dude, like you got this. You're going to be okay. But I was missing that. I was really thirsty for that feeling of that connection for maybe like 10 or 12 years in my life in adolescence, man. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it crazy just like how that guy had that impact on you, and you have had it. I have no idea how many lives you've impacted, but a shit ton. One of them was me. I've impacted a shit ton of lives. One of the people that I'm sure that someone's life who I've impacted is going to impact a bunch of lives, and it continues on this like spiral. It's beautiful. It's like
yeah. And if you tell that guy who helped me out, he will tell you a story about the person that helped him out.
Yeah. It's like a lineage of like healing that's been passed on since the beginning of time.
And I think that's what we kind of see, kind of spiritual, when we see these like, these so-called ascended masters is, not to get rid of that term completely. They're just humans who have gone so deep into themselves that, they've kind of attracted so much attention. Like, wow, this person has a lot to give. And, like Jesus or Buddha or something, they could just like these huge flames. And it's kind of going on now. We have all these people still lighting flames, and we're growing deeper as ourselves into ourselves and lighting more flames. And it's kind of this collective coming together and awakening.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Parham, I had an interesting question or something that came to my mind that I wrote down. So you have, unlike me and Trey, could you estimate how many people you've sat with, like from like a counselor or therapist perspective? Like thousands, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest takeaways, like maybe the things you've learned about human psychology that you think are, one, most mind-blowing, that like you didn't expect before you got into this profession, and two, that just are beautiful, are simply beautiful?
I think all human beings, regardless of who they are, their story, their gender, their background, all human beings want to be loved. All human beings want to be heard. All human beings want to be seen. All human beings want to be acknowledged for who they are. and all human beings want to do something that has a greater purpose than just their own life. You know,
That's it's right on the head.
To their core, man, you know, and they might not know it, by the way. They might not know that they have this burning desire to do something greater than themselves or bigger than themselves. But people tap into that whenever they get out of themselves and they help somebody out, or they do something, you know, volunteer thing, or they go help someone out. Afterwards, they all feel lit up. They all feel good. They all feel like that felt good. I think we all have that in us. And that's what we miss collectively as a society, is we forget how important that part of doing something greater than ourselves has to do with like who we are, our story of human beings.
That's really beautiful. It's like it's almost like this genetic compulsion. It's like, you know, if you try and imagine some alien race, right? You know, they could have very different lifestyle choices, but for us as humans, like as a core, we're like, we light up. Like there's this chemical cocktail that gets released within our body that's like, boom, this feels amazing. And it's like, normally those are the things you follow, because like that's really, you know, how we get together, how we make movement, how we light fire, is like we follow those things. And it's interesting how, you know, really at the core of everyone, that is humanity, as you put it so nicely.
Yeah, but it's just, I think it reinforces, it reminds us that we are, not to be cliche, we are all one, we are all connected. And with the illusion of disconnection, like when we have these moments where we're able to help other people, you know, like I remember reading in some book, like just like crazy stories. It was like this, I think it was The One Mind by Gary something. I can't remember, but he talked about like all these examples of like humans just like doing, like risking their lives in like the most selfless of ways for complete strangers. And I believe that it gives us on an unconscious level a reminder that we are all connected, we are all one. And that's kind of, I don't want to call it the high, but that's kind of like the unconscious is like, yes, you know, and then it leads like more of a connection of the conscious and the unconscious, of the soul and the ego, right? Because it takes us further away from this disillusionment that most of us are in, that society is in, of separation, which doesn't exist. And it's almost like this little tiny knock on the door of truth that's like, you know, boom, 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 you know?
And it's so much softer than the YouTube ads and the Facebook ads and the Amazon ads that are telling you what you actually need, you know, like what you actually need. So it's like we've forgotten these core things about us, and now we've been divided, you know, by different Facebook groups, by different spiritual beliefs, by different, you know, family values. And it's like, oh, and then I need those shoes. Like those are the best shoes I've ever fucking seen. It's like all of a sudden your desires have become so superficial. And you know, and then when you have a huge texture of like society and world like overlapping, you know, those beautiful seedlings of humanity that's like speaking and whispering underneath us, it's, you know, it's so hard to kind of find those again, especially when you just, you know, you open your computer and then a video, and then you go down a rabbit hole for 2 hours on YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, what you asked me, what have I noticed between human beings? You know, there has been over thousands, man. I'm not making that up. And at first, you know, when you think about the mental health field, you're dealing with people that are young, you're dealing with people that are old, you're dealing with people that have been maybe bullied in their life, marginalized in their life. Maybe they're straight, maybe they're gay, maybe they're, in the US at least, we got African American, we got Hispanic, we got white, we have Asian American, if you want to call them that. We have Middle Easterns. I understand I'm generalizing those, you know, those ethnicities and stuff, or those cultures or those backgrounds, but they sit in a chair with you, right? And they start talking, despite of all those differences. They all want to be loved. They all want to be seen. They all want to be heard. They all want to be acknowledged for who they are as a person. And they all want to have, like, they're like, what's the meaning? What's the meaning behind this whole thing? And sometimes they didn't get love when they needed to get loved. Sometimes they weren't heard when they needed to be heard. Sometimes they weren't seen when they needed to be seen. Sometimes they weren't acknowledged for the good they did, and they were only criticized over and over again by a critical parent, you know, that kind of stuff. And they definitely they just get lost, and they get lost in this world of 8 billion. So once I realized that regardless of all that, everyone's the same, and it makes the field of mental health counseling a heck of a lot easier, because as long as you're doing all those things, people get to show up as who they are. Right? They get to show up in gives them the most optimal environment to be able to heal. And all of that has to be rooted in compassion and non-judgment. Because if you judge who they are, I mean, good luck connecting with them, you know?
Oh, they
And I don't
feel
have to
that
agree.
too.
I don't have
It's
to agree.
felt.
Yeah, you just can't judge it. Yeah.
But you've worked with some, because that's so true. Like if you're working with someone, even like for me as an astrologer, like if I do feel any sense of judgment for that person, like it's felt unconsciously, you know, like there is that this kind of mode that you have to set yourself into as a healer, of just that undeniable, irrevocable compassion for whoever, and understanding that even if they're a murderer, even if they're, you know, have done like the most horrible things, that, you know, they were once a baby. I always say that everyone, if you're ever really pissed at someone, just look at them and try to remember that this motherfucker, whatever, was a baby at one time. And it's very hard to stay pissed at them because babies don't know shit. And maybe this baby, you know, didn't develop in the right way. And
I think I saw you do a video on that actually recently. And I like that analogy. But I'll tell you this, when you think about the physical, like a surgeon, right, that has to go do surgery on somebody that maybe just has a big gash in their stomach and they're bleeding out. That surgeon, when they show up, and they show up as a professional that's life or death, helping that person out, they don't care who this person is, where they're from, what their background is, what their beliefs are, what their ideas are. They don't judge any of that stuff. All they do is say, I need to save this person from hemorrhaging and bleeding, or else they're going to die. Now, when people come to healers, whether it's someone working with astrology or working with yoga and physical manifestations of healing modalities, or they're coming into for mental health, right? The emotions, the human mind, the human soul is just like that open wound. It really is.
Yeah.
Now, if I go in there and disconnect based on what I'm seeing on the outside and not treat them the way with surgical precision, the way the surgeon does with compassion and non-judgment, then I'm not going to be able to help that person heal, if you really think about it. So I look at it in that mindset of like, do I treat everybody the way a surgeon would in an emergency room? If the answer is no, it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with me. And as human beings, by the way, sometimes there is a person that you might sit across and the countertransference is so much. Like they just remind you of someone that just did some horrible things to you. And no matter what you do, you just haven't done your own work and you can't separate that person in your experience. You are actually ethically, you ethically need to say, reach out to another colleague and say, hey, I unfortunately can't work with this person. I'm going to need to transfer this person onto you because it's not fair to their care. It's not fair to who they are as a person for me to bring my own into this session. And there's a whole, a handoff that happens with that. And that's okay to do because you have to understand we have limitations as people. We don't have to be perfect, but hopefully that's few and far between and rarely ever happens. I've only happened to have it one time in all my years with somebody. He was just a overt racist that really, really, really hated Middle Easterns. I'm talking about like, he was one of the groups maybe right before you guys. No matter what I tried or did, he just like legitimately was pure full of hatred. And I couldn't the guy just wasn't going to hear it from me. No matter what I would have tried, he just wouldn't have heard it from me. And if somebody would have said the exact same stuff that I was telling to him, he would hear it from them and not from me. And at that point, I have to realize, is this about me or is it about this guy getting the help? Because if someone else can help, but not me, I need to pass that on, So I've done that one time with that one person. I'll never forget it, but I just accepted it.
It's like a detachment. It's like a sort of, it's not a detachment. It's just like, like a consistency and when you look at it, I'm definitely going to take that away with me, that surgeon. Just not judging and just going in with that kind of almost business mindset of like, I need to just be this person. And even if something triggers me, I can't judge it. I don't know that like what happened in this person's life. I don't know if you believe in reincarnation, what happened in this person's past life. Like there's so much mystery that judgment is just, to me, ignorant. Like judgment is just pure ignorance because you really, unless you know the whole story, and none of us do.
Yeah. Emotional wounds and physical wounds are the same thing, my man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how much time you have, by the way, Parham. I know you're busy.
Maybe like 5 more minutes.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess the thing that keeps coming to me that's a huge takeaway is just just about when we were talking about dealing with other people and how really it has more to do with the work that you haven't done as opposed to them. Because I definitely have seen how when I'm kind of in my lower, if you want to call it lower vibratory moods, that I can totally do that. Trey, I don't know if you have had a similar feeling towards that, but to me, it was just it was something I already knew, but it was a great reminder of like, oh yeah. But yeah, this has been amazing. This is definitely like either my favorite. This is one of the best episodes so far.
Yeah, I had one last question before you went off. It's like, so, you said, these are kind of the core things for like humanity. It's like we need to be seen, we need to be loved, we need to be heard. And in the times right now, sometimes that's not available. And a lot of but what's happening is we can find that for ourselves. So kind of what's this like the best kind of advice or steps for meeting those needs for yourself in the isolation?
Yeah, I mean, isolation did have a profound impact on the whole entire world. So I'm not going to discredit that or minimize it. There was a big shift with mental health, with anxiety, with depression, with substance abuse, with a lot of domestic problems that happened. So let's just call it what it is that happened. Thankfully, right now, we are in the upswing for things to change a little bit. However, despite of everything going on, one of the best ways to get connected, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, I do believe it could be the connection with self. So, I do believe in things like journaling. I do believe in things like breathing exercises, right? I do believe in things like reaching out to somebody, whether it's on the phone or whether it's on FaceTime, and being able to authentically communicate with where you are in life, right? Because even little moments of that, if we can't have the big piece of pie we used to have, as long as we have a small piece of that same pie, we are able to nourish that part of us that needs that, right? And know that this is all temporary. This is temporary. What we're going through right now in life is temporary, and it will transition and shift into something else. I don't know what the heck it's going to be. And in that moment, if we commit to continuing to do the work on ourselves and doing whatever we can to connect to another person that makes us feel, whole, complete, safe, connected, all that kind of stuff, then we'll get through it. So it's just a message of hope, man. It's a self-discovery, take a journey through self, and there's always the most beautiful answers, man.
Yeah. And we'll see you on the other side of Bill Gates' chip world.
Yeah.
all the conspiracy theories.
Can't wait.
There's nanobots in the vaccinations, guys. Don't take them.
Okay. Next time you talk to Trey, he'll be a clone. It won't be the real Trey. It'll be the clone version.
I know, man. Well, this was cool. I really do appreciate you guys, man. This was awesome. I look forward to seeing clips of it or seeing the whole thing. Just let me know.
The whole thing.
Yeah, we're gonna release the whole thing and clips too. So,
yeah, we're gonna go video. This like everyone we do audio, but this one's gonna be video and audio. We'll edit it and stuff. And give it. So Parham, we already said he's at the 1 Minute Therapist on Instagram, but you're also doing things on YouTube. Tell us about that, or like just like where to find you in general.
They're a little bit longer. They're a little bit longer format. Every Sunday, I do go on with this guy named Dr. B. We do it's actually a really awesome show if anybody wants to watch it. It's on Dr. B Addiction Recovery on YouTube. We go on, and he's a medical doctor. I'm an addiction specialist, but we take calls from people from all over the world, man. So we've had people from India, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom. They all come on and start talking to us, and we give them our experience and our feedback. And it's a really beautiful community. I do it, I have a lot of fun with it. So Dr. B Addiction Treatment, you can watch all the previous ones, Addiction Recovery. And yeah, man, I'm available, I'm around, accessible. Send me a message.
Yeah, I'll say I'm subscribed to that. It's Dr. B, is it EE, right? Dr. B.
Dr. B Addiction Recovery.
Yeah, I can say I've watched probably like 4 or 5 of them, maybe more. It's awesome. Even if like you're not like struggling with addiction, like you learn so much. Dr. B is like just this like he's just like a super smart, like very like animated guy, and they have a good balance. And you have people calling from like Serbia, hearing all kinds, just hearing people's struggles. It kind of helps me as a healer, but also helps me as a human. So I highly recommend that to anyone. Yeah,
this upcoming week, I think we're moving it to Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But I'll tell you this, we're doing one on Anthony Bourdain, which is one of my favorite humans. Unfortunately, he'll pass away. But Anthony Bourdain, he taught me how that regardless of where you're from in this world, we're all the same. I mean, that's where I got it, to be honest with you. I got it from Anthony Bourdain.
That's literally my mission statement.
But one commitment I'm going to do on that weekly show is everyone that calls in from wherever they call, I'm going to tell them to tell the viewers what's one thing about the people of where they're from that the rest of the people doesn't know that they wish they would know. And I'm going to kind
I
of,
love that. Love that.
I'm going to ask that to every single person.
Such a Sagittarius.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're going to realize something really, really cool, man. So that's my little research I'm going to do on people.
Man, it's so
Awesome.
crazy. Just that's like exactly like what I want to do with my career. So that's crazy you say that. I'm definitely going to tune in. Just showing how we're all the same, country to country, doesn't fucking matter. All the same problems, all the same like emotions and all that stuff. So
right on, man.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much, Parham. This has been awesome. I'm sure we'll speak again. Obviously, we'll stay in contact. Maybe have another version of this someday. Who the fuck knows? But it's been a pleasure, more than a pleasure.
Yeah, so good to have you on, man. It's so nice to meet you too. I heard so much about you from Jesse in the early years, especially like when he was just coming out of that. So, yeah.
Appreciate you, Trey. Jesse, so proud of you, man. So proud of you, Jesse. Beyond words.
Thanks so much, man. Always an inspiration. Thanks a lot.
Peace.
All right. See ya. Wow, that was awesome. Let's talk a little bit longer, or maybe wrap it up, or
yeah, you want to have a little wrap up?
Yeah, let's just kind of. It's nice when we have guests to kind of just have like a little
unwind,
and you really just fucking literally broke my chair. Holy shit! I thought it was
take off our clothes.
Yeah. Dude, you see this thing I'm wearing?
It is getting hot, dude. Fuck yeah! What?
This thing I'm wearing? I never wear it. It's like probably my coolest shirt.
It's fucking so
Romanian. It's from LA.
No, yeah.
It's like one of the random expensive things my mom said.
Yeah, dope.
Clothes wise, she's feeling good. It's like, Mom, I want this Christmas. Okay. But yeah, dude, that was awesome. That was so cool to have that perspective.
That was really cool. Yeah.
I have tons of notes too. So like, just kind of like, I feel like I'll write a dope description. We can talk about that later. But yeah, man, I feel great. It's like after Cosmos, didn't you feel like you were tired? But like I felt so high vibe after the last Cosmos or most Cosmos, unless there's someone that's low vibe. But it's just the way I feel after these too, you know?
Yeah, dude. Sometimes after Cosmos, it's like I can't actually sleep. It's like I'm tired, but I can't sleep because I've been energized. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's exactly.
It's like what chakra? Because I think it's definitely obviously the throat chakra, you know, because I knew before I came on here, like the first 15 minutes, I wasn't nervous or anything, but like when I first started talking to Parham compared to now, my throat chakra was a lot more closed. So it's interesting to think about like how through like a deep conversation like this, one, your throat chakra is opening, right? Because you're talking about your heart, right? Your third eye, right? Because you're having to like kind of dial in on intuition, and you're connecting with other people that are intuitive,
and just even your like connection to yourself. Because like I notice sometimes when I come on a podcast, it's like, oh, my throat feels kind of blocked, or you know, my heart feels kind of closed. I don't know if I'll be able to have a conversation, but it's because I haven't really authentically or honestly connected to myself properly. So it's like that's how I'm showing up.
Yeah, it's almost like an athlete, like kind of how you have to, if you're like a runner, you kind of have to take like a few laps to warm up before running the race.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was like with also with what's her name?
Vanuja. I always fuck up. I will always fuck up names every time. Yeah, it's a similar energy. He is really like, I felt like a sense of like, I don't know. Us three have like had that conversation before in a past life. I felt that like when I set this all up, I was like, there's something familiar about it. We'll never know, but like
it's like three souls, but they're speaking like energetic, like but it's like we're all kind of like understanding, like, oh yeah, we're gonna have this moment.
Yeah, exactly.
in the physical world.
That was cool though. We got lots. So yeah, that's what this podcast is about. It's just like, you know, I had a million times in there that I could have brought up astrology, and he would have been totally cool with it. But you know, I wanted to kind of keep this one. You know, we didn't really need it. You know, I mean, I could have correlated astrology with everything, but I wanted to just hear his perspective, and then maybe, you know, I talked to Kendra from Cosmos, and she, I think, would be a great next guest. Do you agree?
Definitely.
You have no, yeah, but she knows so much. So just remind me, because I did tell her, and she just texted me about it.
I mean,
so she'll
she's
get our
just a huge wealth of knowledge. I love hearing Kendra speak and go into it. She's really passionate about everything she goes into. So
yeah, and she's not like one of these people. I should actually text her. She's not like one of these kind of spiritual people that, or astrologers, for example, who just know astrology, like some people. She does the worst wink ever. I'm getting better at winking. I used to be like this. Hey, trying to be sexy, like. No, but yeah.
I still wish I could raise one eyebrow and lower the other one. I can't do that. My brother taught himself how to do it, but
you can teach yourself, Trey. You can do it. But yeah, we'll have her on. She knows about shamanism so much. She's so knowledgeable. What'd you call her? Oh,
yeah.
and I'm gonna tell her you will be our next guest. So what else? What other final conclusions?
Yeah, I love how, it's no matter where you go, if you're in a spiritual world or kind of anything, it's like, even a medical world, it's like at the heart of it, it's like just really getting down to honesty and being just an authentic human being. And, getting to the heart of that, it's like, I like that he kind of connected us all together with just some few simple words,
Yeah, exactly. Hey Trey, what I was thinking is we could end this recording and do our intro recording, like a 5-minute like intro, because I have all the notes while we're like on this energy. Do you want to just do
Okay,
that?
sweet.
And then it'll be 2 different videos. Okay. So
yeah.
Anyways, guys, thanks so fucking much.
I was like, I'm gonna go run and piss.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's say thank you to everyone. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give us some reviews. I don't think we have any reviews. Actually, I haven't looked, but we would like reviews because reviews are good and shit. Hope you guys enjoyed this. We're gonna keep bringing this. Yeah, we're gonna keep bringing this to you. Trey, anything you want to say?
No, yeah, this was awesome. Yeah, questions, anything, reach out. We love you guys.
Yeah, guys, remember, we're taking questions from listeners, like any life advice, completely anonymous. Like last episode, we answered a lot. Trey, you can go pee.
Unless you have a huge ego and you want us to say your name.
Yeah. Just like if you have anything, even the weirdest, like,
or question, a shout out.
Yeah, me and Trey, we know answers. We have good advice giving skills.
we know answers. Yes, we know the answers.
We know the answers. But yeah, if you're going through anything difficult, one thing I think that we both have is that we really don't get triggered by it much. I know I get triggered by pretty much nothing. Trey, I think, is pretty much the same. So even if it's really fucking dark, ask. Even if it's light, ask. Anything, relationship stuff, anything, life stuff, anything, just send me or Trey a DM and we will answer the question on the motherfucking podcast. Yo.
Slipper.
Anyways, thanks, guys. Peace. How do I stop recording? Oh.